Thank you, Cicely. And hello, everyone. Hope everyone's okay. Today's title or topic is Exploring Climate Change and Mental Health. Let's talk why it matters for our well-being. Climate change is one of the great challenges of our time. The consequences of climate change on exposed biological subjects, as well as on vulnerable societies, are a concern for the entire scientific community. Rising temperatures, heat waves, floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, droughts, fires, loss of forest and glaciers, along with disappearance of rivers and desertification, can directly and indirectly cause human pathologies that are physical and mental. However, there is a lack in psychiatric studies on mental disorders linked to climate change.
A rule that a righteous man has is
the expanding research literature on climate change and mental health includes increasing evidence that extreme weather events, which are more frequent, intense,
You're muted, Tobe. Sorry. Okay.
Have I been muted this whole time?
No, he just went mute not long ago.
Okay, I don't
So
know
the
what
last
happened.
couple of sentences, yeah.
Okay, I'll start from the last paragraph. The expanding research literature on climate change and mental health includes increasing evidence that extreme weather events, which are more frequent, intense, and complex under a changing climate, can trigger post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, major depressive disorder, or MDD, anxiety, depression, complicated grief, severe guilt, vicarious trauma, recovery fatigue, substance abuse, and suicidal ideation. Incremental climate changes, such as rising temperatures, rising sea levels, and episodic drought, can change natural landscapes, disrupt food and water resources, change agricultural conditions, change land use and habitation, weaken infrastructure, and give rise to financial and relationship stress, increase risks of violence and aggression, and displacement of entire communities. The overreaching threats of a changing climate can also incite despair and hopelessness as actions to address the wicked problem of climate change seem intangible or insignificant in comparison to the scale and magnitude of the threats. Paradoxically, these same disastrous circumstances may also inspire altruism, compassion, optimism, and foster a sense of meaning and personal growth, otherwise referred to as post-traumatic growth, as people band together to salvage, rebuild, and console amongst the chaos and loss of a changing climate. That's my brief introduction, and back to Cicely. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tombe, for putting those facts out there. Very, very intriguing facts is the world that we are dealing with today. Now, in the spirit of celebrating Black History Month, we know that in the past, rather than during the Tuesday conversation, we explored great men and women who have made a difference or who have made a change for the better for the communities that they lived in. So in the spirit of celebrating Black History Month, I will share that slide again in line with what Tombe has explained there, because what we are looking at is the change that we most need at this time, and especially when you're talking about climate change. So let me share that slide so that you think about the men you see and women think about what they did, you know, what you know that they did in their respective communities and the benefits we are today enjoying because of their work. And so the big question by the time we end the conversation this morning is, how much of your input to climate change will be remembered years to come? And especially now that, as Toby has mentioned, it has huge impact on our mental health. So let me share that before we go any further. Okay. Now, I would want to share this as a moving slide, but there is something on my desktop which does not allow me to do so. I'll keep trying. However, you can see those men and women. Yeah. Let me hear from the platform who you can see there. Just shout out.
I can see Wangari Madhai, Jomo Kenyatta,
Mandela.
na Chris Kirubi, na Mugabe, na Madera. Those are the ones I can recognize straight away.
Yeah, fantastic. Yes. Anybody else there? Of those who have not been mentioned yet?
Ellen Johnson Sirleaf.
Yes, that's our one of the women that we celebrate today. I mean, yeah, I believe she is still, I don't know whether she's still in power. Maybe you can.
No, she's out of power now. Nkrumah of Ghana, the man that took the Ghanaian to independence.
Brilliant. You've mentioned Sahif. What is important about her there, Anthony?
About Ghana?
No, Sahif, the woman we have there. Sahif.
Oh, Johnson Sirleaf, she was she brought about the peace, because after Liberia has been fighting war for over 10 years or so, you know, and those men, they were not able to bring about any solution. She was one of those people who pioneered other women for them to stand firm and fight that. It's like they went into a kind of deprivation of sex, you know, so they protested that if the men doesn't come together to end the war, no man will have sex with any of the Liberian women again. So for the desire for us to do what we got to do, so the guys went back to the drawing table. And at the end of the day, she came out to become the champion, and they end up electing her as the first female president of Liberia, you know?
Yeah.
And she was also one of the first women to ever be democratically elected in the whole of Africa.
Oh, have managed to do that. Yes, a very powerful woman indeed. And so we are privileged to be celebrating her life when she is still alive and looking at that journey of change that he made in our country. She deserves all the respect and the celebration. Now, who else can you see? Somebody mentioned Kwame Nkrumah. He's one of those youngest looking men there. The first president of Ghana who brought the country into independence. And actually not just in Ghana, but in Africa.
He was a Pan-Africanist.
He was indeed.
Yeah.
And so we are enjoying the fruits of his hard labor. And if we remember about how he died, anybody on the floor can tell us a little bit more of how he died?
People from Ghana.
Yeah, go on.
We don't know.
Okay. Yes, I know Grace is not here, who has a lot of information about him. But we know that he did not die a very dignified death.
No, actually, I think the thing is, you know, he was actually removed from power, though. He was actually removed from power because people started, when he was getting a little bit older now, people undermine his regime, you know. So one way or the other, the aim and objective that he had for Africa was not actually able to be fulfilled during his regime. It was after he was gone, and then people realized that those who were thinking that he wasn't doing the right thing, the letters started thinking that, oh yes, though we are on the wrong track. So I think that's one of the core reason why Ghana is one of the most stable country in Africa, because they really want to bring back some of those ideology that he was propagating during his lifetime, you know. But he was not actually respected, like you said, to die in good dignity as we were expected.
Yeah.
He played in the independence of the West African countries.
Fantastic. And Africa in general. And most of the African leaders or first presidents were very, very close to him. But Sandre, he was overthrown at some point. But when he died in his exile, people demanded that he is buried back in his home country.
Sure.
And really, that is to show the respect that they owed him for what he did for them. So being a change goes a long way. It might not be noticed at the time you're doing it, but with the generations to come, the history will be told.
Can I say something about Wangari Madhai?
Yes, please.
Wangari Madhai is a world-known environmentalist, and I think he won a peace Nobel, what is it called?
Nobel Prize.
Nobel Prize, because of her efforts in initiating, in fighting to make sure that the rules about environment and fighting against the climate change were taking place in Kenya. And there is one incident where the politics, I think during the 90s or something like there in Kenya, they wanted to turn the biggest green environment in the city of Nairobi. They wanted to put concrete and turn it into a big building, an international hotel. And then Wangari Madhai resisted. And it was a project of the government of the day. They wanted to create an international center for conferences and meetings and things like that. And yet, it is the only place, Uhuru Park, it is called Uhuru Park. It is the only place that has green grass and trees and dams and people can walk and can enjoy cool air. They wanted to turn it, and she resisted, and it became a big issue, which became international because that project was being funded by international investors. And I think it became an issue even at the UN or somewhere. And finally, the donors were forced to withdraw the funding, and the Kenya government could not be able to fund the project because it was a very big project. And so Wangari Madhai won the case. Another case is about the destruction of Karura forest. Karura forest is a habitat in inside actually Nairobi city. It is also a forest, an indigenous forest with indigenous water and streams and ecosystems and small animals, and it has been it attracts a lot of these elite rich people who wanted to acquire land by grabbing and put up infrastructure for their own benefit. And Wangari Madhai has fought all the way to prevent that forest, and she has been beaten, put into prison, demonstrations, and she won a bit of the battle because part of it was taken. Karura forest, part of it was taken, but she won quite a very big portion of it. I worked with her myself. I visited her in her office in Nairobi. When she came in Edinburgh in 1992 to get her trophy, at that time I was a student in Edinburgh University, and I attended the forum that she attended. She gave a lecture in the University of Reading in 1992 Christmas, around the Christmas time. So I would like to say that about Wangari Madhai.
Fantastic. That's a very, very well narrated story of a life very well lived. And I say very well lived because he is now late, but we are having that beautiful reflection of her life. And yes, she was a professor, not very well celebrated at the time, and especially when she was fighting to keep the forests. At some point, I believe she was almost put into prison, but she was ready to do that because she wanted to maintain the green, the nature of the Karura forest and the area in the town center or the city center, which people enjoy now. So this is a woman who saw the benefits or the impacts of cutting down trees, and especially in the world of mental health. So climate change has not started today, and those who fought for it not to be, to be observed, we are celebrating them now. Most of them are not alive, but their impacts are being felt. Now, I like the fact that you attended one of the conferences that she held. Now, next week, we know that there is that big climate change conference, and I wonder how many of us here will be there to be telling the same story. So thank you, Dr. Kanina, for narrating that story very well of Wangari Madhai. We'll be focusing on her later. But going back to our images there, the great men and women. Now, did somebody mention Mugabe?
Or about Mugabe?
Yes, we can see him there, and perhaps some of you might be asking, what is there to be celebrated of him? Actually, we know that he was one of those who lived the longest, but also one of those presidents who gained the independence of his country last. But the history behind that for him was great, and that's what we remember him for. He may have done other long things, but he brought the country into independence, and people enjoy what they enjoy today because of his work. Yeah, and the other woman we see there is Mary Sickle in the world of NHS. The NHS we celebrate today, and especially for the BME communities, is behind this woman. She did quite a lot for the wounded after the Crimean War. And because of that, or because of our leadership, we have the Leadership Academy celebrated within the NHS. Now, somebody also mentioned, please, Kirubi there.
Yeah, the entrepreneur.
Fantastic. Yes, being the change is about the business outlook into things. So enterprises, as communities, we know how much we try to do in that respect. So he's a man to be celebrated for what he did. He died about 3-4 months ago, but left a great legacy for generations to come. So a lot there to be remembered. It's about being the change. And so my biggest question is, what is to be remembered of us about climate change that is currently hot in the air, and especially due to the impact it is having on our mental health. So I'll stop sharing for now so that we can focus on other things. But before, I know James is with us, but before he goes, he'll be leaving us quite shortly. James, would you want to come in and tell us a little bit more about climate change, mental health, and what you have seen there?
Yes, thank you, everybody, and good morning, everybody. And I hope we are all keeping well. And I know there's a lot of news around COVID lately. I hope we're all looking after ourselves. Don't forget to wear your face masks everywhere you go, please. I know the rules are being relaxed, but it's becoming very difficult for us to manage to get rid of this COVID. Today, the plan that we have here is extremely important to all of us. And I think we have had so many beautiful stories and connection with the climate change and everything. But when I go back to my own childhood and watching or getting to know what my dad used to do with farming, although it was at a very basic local farming, subsistence farming in most African countries, but the ideology behind leaving the land to fallow for 3 or 4 years was actually rooted in conserving or protecting the integrity of vegetation and also the land, to make sure that the land is not overused. Otherwise, it's lied or allowed to regain its fertility after one farming season. So I kind of began to pick on that, and I checked that why do we have to move, which is known as rotational farming. In the West, it's more commercialized. They can till the same land over and over and over. So these are aspects of how Africa seems to have been really in the forefront in terms of environmental integrity. I just want to put that in there. I know most of you perhaps experience it, but I did, and I like it. I like that rotational farming where you leave this land to fallow for some years, and then you come back, and then you cultivate it, and it's rich in fertility. And for me, that was fantastic. So coming to our topic now, and how do we relate this to mental health problems? I've been looking at 4 categories here. And one really is the extreme weather events that can take place. We all know about storms and all of those things that can really affect our mood. It can make us feel completely depressed, when we hear about storms, about all of those things happening, flood and other things can sometimes it can really come close to home to us. So it's really important for us to bear that in mind. The other aspect I was looking at was the acute weather condition, for example, droughts and heat waves and all of these things. And we've all been hearing about drought system or condition in Africa, which is really causing us a lot of problems, perhaps particularly sub-Saharan Africa. When we have drought, it becomes very difficult for us to farm. And when we don't farm, we don't have food. And when that happens, there's death and all of those traumatic death that can take place. So it's really important. That can actually relate to chronic stress as well for those poor farmers who don't have any land to cultivate because of drought. And we also look at the natural disasters, mudslide in my country. A few years ago, a huge mudslide took place and so many people died. In fact, those who were accounted for, perhaps even the number would have been less than those who were not accounted for, because it's a poor country and the infrastructures are not as advanced as here. So you can imagine how that brought a lot of trauma for all of us. Even today, the trauma is still hanging on the country. So that can also lead to violence, conflict, and traumatic death and all of those things. So all of these things are all really connected. Human being is so much connected to his or her environment. And then finally, we look at the landscape, degradation, when we look at loss of the ecosystem. And for all of us who perhaps grew up in Africa where our land was forested and all those beautiful landscape, if you went back now, maybe all of those forests are going, and just imagine how you feel that you have lost your identity, because that's something that identify you or you identify yourself with. Forest, good landscape, good forest, good rivers, and all of those things. But you go back and everything is changing. So these are some of the areas I've been looking at just to help us really to connect with some of the things that we can actually do. So bringing that home now, even when we find ourselves here, it's really important to begin to check, what are you doing personally to impact on your environment positively? And what is happening around you that is impacting on your mental health? Do you have any scope to go for work? Is there any field around you? Or has it all been built with a supermarket or housing? Are you able to go to any nearby forest? How are you able to access any natural environment? Because nature actually can nurture us, but that's the availability of nature. If not around, how is it going to nurture us? So we really need to reflect on how we can be contributors as well. I know this fantastic images we have seen, which Cecily brought to us. It's really about looking at what other people did, and we admire those things. But what are we doing? How can we reflect on our own little activities that we can undertake? So really, it's a mandate I want us to put on ourselves in terms of how do we engage with our environment positively, and to have that ecosystem that we can be proud of, that can actually minimize some of all of these things I've mentioned, for example, drought, storm, and heat waves, mudslide, wildfire, flooding, and all of those things, and even loss of your ecosystem. You know, we losing our natural environment where we can just nurture ourselves in. So really, for me, it's really important for us. And this is a really important topic. And as Cecily said, in the next few weeks, there will be a big meeting in, I think it's in Glasgow, and most world powers will be coming together. So in whatever little way, let's begin to think. If you were there to talk to them, what will you say? What will you tell them to do? What word will you really utter to motivate them to do something about the climate change? So thank you all, and I wish you a very good afternoon.
Thank you so much, James. We will definitely miss your homework there, but you've given us very, very important pointers to think about as we continue exploring this agenda. Now, you've mentioned ecosystem, so many. So we are actually in the, with the conversations around climate change, we are talking about eco-anxiety. Yeah, there is eco-ego, but we are now talking about eco-anxiety because that is a huge impact climate change is having on us. Now, to really get to understand where to start or where we are led with the whole climate change agenda, we have Sahib to take us through the poll. Two very important questions. Get to see how much you know or how much you're doing. And then we'll get to hear from Dr. Kanina and Anthony at some point. So over to you, Sahib.
Thanks, Cecily. I think this topic's really interesting. It's not something I've really ever thought about before. The topic of climate. What was the expression you just said? I forgot what it was, but climate and
Eco-anxiety.
What was it?
Eco-anxiety.
Eco-anxiety, that was it. Yeah, I quite like that. I've never heard of it before. So I'm really looking forward to the discussions today, to see what everyone thinks. So, as usual, I'm going to share the poll with everybody. Hopefully it should be on your screen now, I want to say. There are two questions today. So I'll go through each question. The first question is, how much do you know about climate change and its impact to well-being, and more specifically mental health? So the possible answers you can have for this are 80%, 50%, or 20%. I would say if you don't really feel like you fit in any of those categories, go to the closest one you can identify. If it's 100%, then I suppose 80% would be good enough. And for the second question, it asks, how much do you think we are doing as communities to address climate change? And again, the possible answers are 80%, 50%, and 20%. So I'll just give everyone a couple of minutes to have a think about those and submit their answers. And then once everyone's done, we'll discuss the results. Can everyone see the poll?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we can
okay.
see it. Yeah.
Apparently no one has answered yet. Either no one has answered or something's wrong on my end. Hopefully the form.
It says it hasn't started yet.
Oh, let me reset it. Sorry, 1 second. I can't share the results, can I? Is it showing the results? Oh no. 1 second, let me just restart it. Sorry guys. There we go.
We can see it, but you cannot submit.
Can you do it now?
Okay, let's try.
Let's try.
No.
Oh yes, yeah. People were putting their. Oh, thank God. I don't know what happened there. Sorry.
I was able to submit mine, I was able to submit mine and I started seeing the result, but then it disappeared again.
Sorry, strange. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, I've submit mine.
Would you mind submitting it again? Because before it didn't say that anybody had submitted anything. So if we do it again, then hopefully this time we can see all the answers. Oh my gosh.
I think it's okay now.
Yeah, I think everyone has now shared their results. So on screen now should be all of the answers everybody put down. So for the first question, how much do you know about climate change and its impact to well-being, and more specifically mental health? 56% of you said 80%, 22% said 50%, and 22% also said 20%. So that's quite interesting. So I think the general consensus is that a lot of people here do think they know about climate change and it's the link to mental health. Personally, I would probably put 20%, because I kind of could have gauge a rough idea of how the two are linked, but not enough to explain it in a point that has any sense of coherence at all. Would anybody else like to comment on the answer they put or respond to what I said?
Can I come in, Saif?
Yes, please, Esther.
Yes, I will just go for 20% like you. And the reason for that is I deal with climate change and mental health separate. Many a times I don't actually link them off, or maybe just to think on how climate change has affected our mental health, and hence the reason why I put 20%. And many a times, honestly, I've not just linked the two. I deal with climate change, I deal with mental health, but I've not just stopped to kind of link them, how they affect each other.
Thank you, Esther. And yeah, I agree. I don't think I've done that either, really. It's not really ever been something that's come to mind, I suppose. But I suppose that's why we're having this conversation now, which is really good. I suppose it's really good to think about how we can start thinking those things are related, I suppose. What is there that apart from discussions like this that link the two topics together naturally for people. But anyway, sorry, I'm just rambling. Eva, sorry, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, same. I think when I've always thought about climate change is when I see there's floods, when there's serious floods and people get flooded, and then I think, okay, that has to be bad. If your house is flooded, that's not good for your mental health. But I am yet to, I think there are people who have a fear of what's going to happen for our children and because of what's happening. Yes, we try to do our bit, but I think also with us, I kind of keep them separate, but it's something we need to be conscious about. And even as you said, that word eco-anxiety, I'm like, wow, that's a new term. I need to learn about that, because I think we all do our bit, pick up rubbish, because again, you're taking care of the world and the climate, and actually it's actually good for your mental health. So as much as we don't link the two, they go hand in hand. Without actually, so this is a very interesting topic. I'm really interested to hear. I would have put 20% because I would have thought the major things that happened, then I would link to, okay, that's severely affecting people. But yeah.
Thank you very much, Eva. Brilliant. So I see that Ashley has his hand up.
Hi, everyone. I'm leading on from whatever Eva said about how it feels like something that's going to happen to our children. You always see it on the news and it seems so far away. So I think for a lot of people, they just kind of push it to the side and don't really focus on it because it's not necessarily going to affect us. And I think that's why most people don't see it as their mental health, to do with mental health, is because it just seems that next step. It seems so far away.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree with that. It doesn't seem like it's going to affect us directly. So I'll go to Anthony and then Mary.
Yes, I mean, and if we are sitting here and we are talking about climate change, the concept is we just see what happened on the TV or like from what we are seeing on the TV. But like for me, I put 50% because throughout my life, I've been somehow victim from things that have to do with climate change in the physical world and even in my dream, you know, like and in the early 90s, when I was young, before I got separated from my family, which I have never been able to get back to them, they have 3 dreams. And these 3 dreams have connection to climate change. Our farmhouse got flooded and I was washed away by the river on 2 different occasions. I fell from a bridge and I fell into a deep river, which was a flooded river. And that was the episode that separated me from my family, which is part of climate change. Whether it is true dream, but in reality, it happened. In 2018, when I went back to my home country, the village where I grew up, this village had been swallowed by the sea. Everything in that village is being disappeared. And my local people, or like the native people who have little knowledge about climate change, who are being disturbed by what is happening in their society, they told me, and I have a video that I brought with them, I'd make a video interview. They said the God is angry with them. They don't know why the God is being angry with them, and that's why he's taking away their land through the river. Places on our sea where we used to swim, that I used to walk and go, now they are deep ocean. The land is being eroded. Everything is disappearing faster in my own eyes. So this, it worries me. I'm losing my land. I'm losing access to what I knew that used to be a country. I lost my connection with my family in some of these things. So for me, it is a big issue. It is a big, big issue. Every day I worried about that. And I want to be one of those people that can impact the change, you know. An 18-year-old girl in Sweden, they call Glitter. In 2018, she started her climate change strike. And even though I was saying, but luckily I have some connection to Sweden, you know, I was saying, wow, look, this little girl, she's doing really great. What can I do? So even as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking what I can do or what I will be able to do in that society.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for sharing that story. I suppose it's quite a stark contrast to what Ashley said, where it's like you kind of lived in it and you experienced it, as opposed to Ashley saying, you know, it's not really something that you do notice or you can see. So it goes to show that it can depend on just your living circumstances, really, and where you happen to be in the world. So thank you for sharing. Mary, would you like to share?
Yes, I would say that it's really to do with environment. The two are connected because where you live, it determines, you know, your health, everything that, you know, you go through it. The food that you eat, most of them like got chemicals in them. So that also to do with the environment and the mental health. That's what I believe in, because mental health is to do with lack of so many things in your body. So I agree with the previous speaker. Most of the people, they're moving even to places that are like a prone flood, you know, they're building in these areas. So there is no way that the water can run through to the rivers or seas. So that's what is affecting us. And like in Africa, people are cutting trees down. And these trees are really helping to soak most of the water. And also it sucks the, you know, the carbon, you know, it helps the environment. I believe that it does with the environment. So if we don't look after our environment and surrounding, I think we are gonna be in a big problem in the near future. And it's this generation that is really destroying the environment, because our fathers and our grandfathers, they look after the land. You know, it's the greed that we are. I wanted a villa here. I wanted villa in Africa. I wanted villa in everywhere that there is a city. And I think, oh, I can put my hands there to get money. Or it's just greed. Too much greed in this world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary, for sharing that. I definitely agree with what you're saying. But the way I kind of see it is that say those like grandfathers that looked after the farms, of not farms but land, things like that. Nowadays, kids, they have so much more choice. They don't have to stay and look after that. They can go out, go to university, go do whatever they want. So I feel like because that choice is now so wide and so expanded, it becomes harder for people to kind of stay doing the jobs that are actually quite important, as you say, which is a shame, but it's just kind of a consequence of, I don't know, modern day rapid developing society, I suppose. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to comment on?
Yes.
Yeah, Mohammed?
Yeah. Can modernization affect human existence? Everything is modernized now at the moment. Like going to school, sometimes they don't have time to go to the farm. Going to college, as you mentioned, you see, modernization have something to do with our existing life.
That's true, and it will just keep changing it. Like it's been changing so rapidly over so many years now that it just seems to be going in one direction, which is a shame.
Yes, and the answer to that, yes, you're right, there, Sahib. It's true. It can. The reason why we are having climate change talks now is because of how modern things have become, and in that becoming, there has been a negative impact on the climate, and I believe we are going to be hearing more of that, after the big conference. And looking at, focusing it on what we can do individually to minimize the risk of things getting even worse.
When is this conference, Cecily? I didn't know about this. Oh, she's gone. Would anybody else like to? Oh, is Cecily back?
Oh, sorry, it's in Glasgow. You can Google it. It's all over. It's in the news. It's all over.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So if nobody else has anything to comment on this question, we can move to the second one. Cool. So Mary, go for it. Oh, I think you're on mute, Mary.
Sorry, you mentioned that because people are developing very fast. It doesn't mean that we have to cut the trees down and we have to have 2 houses and, and the population are growing as well. So if we share everything, I think the world will be a better place. Sharing is good, but having everything to myself, I'm big and I have this, we have this, and you're lower and I'm higher, that's a big problem. Thank you.
I think I really support what Sister Mary is saying, because most of the impact of the climate change is not from the individual or like we the commoner. This is the result of multi-million companies who have the money. They can even buy a whole country and destroy it for like looking for gold. Think about the gold mining that is going on in in Australia. Some of these companies, they are destroying pieces of land that is almost bigger as my whole of my country. Nothing is there. The only thing they are digging, bringing in water and destroying everything. If it live with us, the human being, our activities, just for our survival, the planet was still going to be intact as it used to be in our days, or like the days of our forefather. It's greed. Everything is about greed. Timber company, like when I was small, when I was really young, those company in my country, like the logging company, they were going there, destroying these forests. Some of these trees have been over there for thousands of years. In one day, they can cut like up to 200, 300 to 1,000 of trees. What are they doing with that? It's for them to get money. This is greed. It's purely greed that is destroying us, not the population growth or any other thing. It's greed.
Thank you, Anthony and Mary, for sharing that.
Can I say something?
Yes,
Sorry
please.
to cut you, Saif. I think following on Anthony's point, I think climate change's progress is propelled by developed countries. and due to their big industry. And the poorer countries are often affected, or the most affected, because of the developed countries' pursuit of, like Anthony said, wealth and their greed, and is often a detrimental effect to the poorer countries of the world who do not have the funds or resources to effectively deal with it. And I think the second point I'd like to make is education is vital. So educating the children about climate change can help them become aware about the risk to the planet and give them the tools in the future to help combat the negative effects of climate change, which I think is very important. So yeah, that's my contribution. Thank you.
Thanks, Tombe. I was going to say, in response to that, to put you on the spot a little bit, you were saying about climate change being taught in schools and then that being helpful for when they're older. Because when I was in school, I'm pretty sure we learned about climate change. And not to say that I'm not like eco-friendly, but like I feel like I could be doing more. But so what more do you think schools could teach, perhaps? Is it kind of like climate on a more, I don't know, a wider scale, on a more local scale? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think both on a local and a wider scale, because the children are our future. They're going to be our next teachers, our next doctors, our next scientists. So educating them when they're young, and getting them used to what is going around in the world today. And climate change is happening today. Well, it's been happening for years and years. We all know this, or most of us know this, and it's just going to get worse in the future if we don't do something now. So I think the earlier that we, basically nipping it in the bud, the earlier we catch the children and instill in them that, the country is at peril, and in a few decades we'll be in a lot of bother. So I think, starting locally in your local environment, like someone was saying, picking up rubbish, from the small things to the larger things, when we're talking about the government getting involved, and backing things like zero net households and electric cars. So I think it starts at the grassroots levels, and also you need to be done at the wider scale, the government level as well.
Thanks,
I think if I can just give a little contribution,
yeah,
this the one of the world most recognized youth activists on climate change is Greta Thunberg. She's from Sweden. She was 15 years old when she started her project as a climate strike in her school, and it grew. And today she has been speaking to the UN. She has been speaking to every world organization, every world leaders. She refused to even fly because she knows the impact of that. So in school, if we have the right direction, this is what this lady, she is now an icon. The whole of Europe knows her. She has been speaking here to our prime minister in this country, in the UK. I'm not going to talk about America. She even refused to even meet President Trump. Trump invited her, she refused to meet him. Meet him because she believed that he is not in favor, or like he has no knowledge about climate change. And she, as an activist, you see, so in this sense, you will see that education, or like as Tommy was saying, in education, if we have a structure that follow this thing, it's going to work. Because some of us would know exactly. So when they talk about climate change, we know that, yes, this is real. It's not about fiction. It's real, and it is going to happen. Because Sweden, even though that lady, she's so strong about this climate change, she's trying to help other countries. Not even Sweden. Sweden is far more advanced when it comes to climate change. They are such the society, like from the 2006 or so, the climate change agenda that Sweden has been implementing, or like the Scandinavian country in general has been implementing, the whole of Europe is far behind them. She knows what she's on, because that was what has been taught in her society. She's trying to expand these things in the rest of the world. I live in Sweden. I know what I'm talking about. When you are driving cars in Sweden, some of this petrol we are smelling here in the UK, it is no longer there. they closed certain petrol stations because they couldn't live up to the renewable energy. They closed them down. Everything is there, I'm telling you. Other societies are doing it, and we can do it if we are ready. But it is greed that is keeping us down, because the big companies that are responsible, who are doing this thing, they don't want to stop, because it's going to involve a lot of money. If we remove the aspect of greed, this climate change subject going to be something else. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Yeah, Mohammed.
What's the difference between climate changes and global warming?
Anthony, would you like to respond to that?
Climate change, I mean, global warming and Mr. and Karin is involved everything that have to do with climate change, you know, because you have global warming in that sense, things are getting hotter, everything, you know, these things that lead to flooding, everything, because the ice is being warm. So in one way or the other, it's just a matter of playing with the world, but it is the same, because climates affect the whole world and global warming affect the whole world. So I think it's just about us playing with terms, but they are in the same direction.
Okay. Is volcanic eruption climate change?
Sorry?
Volcanic eruption.
Volcanic eruption?
Yeah, is it climate change?
Volcanic eruption can be brought about by climate change, because if the volcanoes has been erupted in this area and the place becomes so hot, like what we are seeing on our island that has been going on for so long, the climate has been changed, because everything in that whole environment has been affected. Plants where those volcanic ashes or like though magma is falling down, there will be no, it's going to take donkeys of years, even not in our lifetime, for things to even reverse to what it used to be.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Wow, I'm loving this. It's a lot of geography, a lot of history. We can't get it wrong. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah, thank you guys. I think that's really, really important discussion you were having. And also I was gonna say, to bring it back to mental health as well, it's similar to what Anthony and Mary were saying earlier about how a lot of it is due to greed. If, as Tombe said, you know, kids are being taught about climate change at a young age, I feel like in turn that kind of leads to learning about the importance of sharing, as Mary said, and the importance of kind of giving to others. And as Eva said earlier, I'm a reference machine today. As Eva said earlier, doing like recycling, things like that, sharing with others makes us feel good. Like it makes our mental health, you know, positive, which is only a good thing. But greed, as Anthony said, slowly deteriorates our mental health. And then ultimately things go corrupt, unfortunately. But yeah, so that was a fabulous discussion. I'll move on to the second question now, which is, how much do you think we are doing as communities to address climate change? Now, the answers for this one are interesting because they're kind of flipped from the first question. So only 22% thought we were doing about 80% to address climate change. 33% thought we were doing about 50% in terms of how much we're doing. And 44% of you said 20%. I personally, I wouldn't know what to put for this one, to be honest. I don't know what communities necessarily do to address climate change. I suppose, like, I'm part of the local mosque and they preach, you know, recycling glass, recycling clothes, recycling in general. I think that's quite important, but there's not necessarily an emphasis on it per se. It's kind of just something important that's there. It's not something we actively practice day to day. Does anybody want to share their experiences or what their thoughts are on this?
Yes, I think I can come in again.
Please.
You know, I live here, but I have a lot of concept about the Scandinavian. Right now, Scandinavian, like Denmark and Sweden, they have a factory that we call the Hungry Factory. All the bins, all the food waste that we are using, that we are throwing away on the street or whatsoever. Even Britain is selling, the UK is selling their waste to the factory over there, because the factory is so hungry that and Denmark can no longer provide waste food to feed that company, that factory, for renewable energy. renewable energy, like implementing, it starts from slow, but the whole society should be ready to embrace those things. Like in the UK now, I came here like few years ago, I saw them bringing in little green bags. They are trying to say you have to put your wasteful here and there. For me, how many people are really using that waste bag? Less than 50% they are doing it because the education was really poor. In Sweden, when that thing started around 2005 or so, for nearly a year, they were educating the society from TV to billboards, all those things. People knew what they need to do before even they brought in the green bag. But in the UK, they just post it at your door, and at the end of the day, they put in the little leaflet. Not everybody is really willing to read that leaflet. These things have been in existence for like over a year. But I promise you, I have visited home, that leaflet is still in that bag. They have never ever used it because the education is poor. If we really educate ourselves to do what we got to do, we can do it on the community level. Like, for example, I see myself like a farmer. And like Mr. James was talking earlier on, we do this rotational farming from one farm to another. You do those kind of things. In that sense, we have some form of deforestation because you leave this farm, you destroy this forest, you go over there, destroy another one, you do this. I am not really in favor of that. You get your large piece of land, you do a kind of rotational farming on that land. You plant here, the next time you plant on the next portion, you bring different kind of crops. That's what I like to do, because I preserve the rest of the environment. I refuse to destroy the forest because, like Sister Mary was saying, flooding take place. When there is no more tree, the flooding is going to take place. We should start at a very little level, and then we see every other people, they adopt that. I have seen it is affecting me, and I want to implement it, but it depends on how much every one of us are doing. How much or how serious do we take these things to be? How many of us are using these green bags? That's just a simple example. How many of us are really using the green bags that the UK introduced for us to be putting our waste food? People are still missing it. I will see people putting that paper in that waste bag, and that green bag was meant for only food. But people don't follow those instructions because they never got the education. Education is really important in everything we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Would anyone else like to come in?
Now, it seems most of it was answered in the first question, or rather, yeah. But really, as we go along, you notice how much as a community we could do, and therefore adding to the, the 100% that we are looking for. The reason why we started 80% and ended 20% is because on the whole, we have some understanding, but we are not 100% sure. And it's not because we live in a world where, as humans, it's about continuous development, and educating ourselves really adds to that. And the reason why we don't go beyond 20% is because there is some understanding. There is something that you know about the subject matter, but you're not there yet. But the ambition is to get to 100% and to get away from the 0%. Yeah. So it's the little knowledge that we have that we need to add to, so that we get better at what we are doing. So beautiful conversation.
Yeah. I would like to ask a question to everyone, what they think communities can do. Let me get the question back up. The communities can do to address climate change. I'm quite interested to hear people's thoughts on that. They'd like to share.
But as Anthony mentioned about waste collection, yeah, can we deal with that issue? How can we sort that issue out?
Could you repeat that? Sorry, it's something
as
that
a waste collection. People are not be educated how to throw their waste out, and then what are the reasons? Why are they not be educated? And I have reason to say that some of them cannot read English, cannot speak English, And you drop this leaflet, they don't know. And sometimes I have to stand at my door and say, oh, put it on the right bin, because you don't know what is green, red. You don't know what is color coded.
And that's very true. And the problem is that it changes so much. You know,
Yes,
like
and
your
most of these
different
things are
bags.
color coded, you know.
So Lina,
Um,
what you're saying there, Karim, is about challenging and positively challenging or constructively challenging some of our actions.
Yes.
Brilliant. Mary, did you have something to share as well? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yes, it has to start from home, you know. When like you got family members, children, or then when the letter comes, like when they started this new recycling, you know, the smaller food waste, obviously they gave you all the information. So whoever read the information should pass it on to the whole family. Or like me, I will go if somebody, or I do get help sometimes with Scare. If they put something in a wrong recycling, I have like 3 bins now in my kitchen. So I will pick it up and I say, no, doesn't go here. Even how small it is, sometimes it's so tiny. But if the whole world take that small, tiny things and put in the right place, imagine it will be tons of waste. So it starts from home. And again, I'll go far wide, like other countries, like they will take their rubbish to Africa or Asia, you know. The good thing, people are opening their eyes. Canadian say that they were gonna take recycling to Africa or this thing. They end up taking nappies and all that. I think to one of the Asian countries, if I'm not mistaken, is Malaysia. But the good thing, they open their eyes, they send the rubbish back to Canada. You see? So it's an unfair world. It's just, I don't know how to say it. It's really, I get angry, you know? Like my homeland, one person will go and just cut all the trees and move to that particular area. Where do you want these people to go? You have your own place. Why don't you just go there? I know that the other place you will get so much money, but why do you want so much money? You know, you can live in the little you have. You can grow. I grow my own vegetables here. So what little I have little money, yes, but with the vegetable I have outside my garden and everything, it's just, you know, it's just fairness in this world will take us a long way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for sharing that. Lorraine, I see you've raised your hand.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for all the sharing and the information. I'm sitting here and I'm learning because I'm one of those people who put 20% for both because I know very little about climate change. But as we speak, my mind goes back to 2010 when I came to live in this little area of Caversham. A nice little part of Caversham. I came in and I saw the buildings. They were clean, pink or red brick building. And I thought, this looks nice. The walls look as though they'd been freshly done or clean. But as time progressed, I saw the deterioration in this little court. It has deteriorated so much. The buildings became black, the walls became black, the little vegetation around the building became so thick and, well, ugly really. And as I think it was my sister who's just spoken, she said it begins at home. And it begins, well, not necessarily in the house, but it does start them because we have to educate the children. And as I've said, as time progressed, I see this court deteriorate in looks and in relational as well, because although the people that I live amongst, they want to know, but they don't want to know the person. They just want to know about your business. And as a result, I think they found that difficult with me because I mean, I don't sit around and gossip and talk about the other person's business. And that's deterioration in one's life. And so the community deteriorates as well. I don't like you. I'm not going to allow you to live here. And that in itself affect the area. But I think that we all in our small way or large way contribute to this thing called climate change affecting mental health. And as I think it was Anthony and others said, you know, those who have, they still want more, so they become greedy and begin to destroy. And I've seen this place where I'm living now become very, very, well, you know, ugly. There's been times when I think to myself, I don't want to be here. But, you know, one can change. Whatever little change we can make. And I determined that I'm going to stay here because I can make a change. And I find now that although the neighbors are not so aggressive, they still try to intimidate through some behavioral pattern. But, you know, as well as people of color, Black folks, we've experienced a lot of that. So I refuse to run away from that because that's everywhere in community. Climate change is everywhere, no matter how small. But, you know, I think as we work at it, as we stick to it, regardless of how difficult it becomes, there will be change. Because I know that Reading Borough Council doesn't listen to me much. They listen to the majority of people that lives on this court. But, you know, we have a greater God who will bring things into light. And I depend on that. And that's why I'm still here, in spite of all the little nigglies. And we talk about the green bags. We got some little bins to put whatever we're supposed to put in. And with those little bins, since they came, my bin has been up one end of the court, down to the other end. These folks have taken in my big black bin, my rubbish bin overnight, and they searched through it. I do not know what they're looking for. But I'm thinking, you know, the change will come. I mean, in the larger countries where the richer people are doing the damages, whether it comes in this life or not, but it will come. So we can only do the little we can, and one day somebody will listen. In my little community here, somebody will listen. So I'm thankful for the fact that I am learning that although climate change is a global thing, we can look at it from where we live and try to make a change. Because as I've said, the greenery around this place, it couldn't, for some unknown reason, Reading Borough Council wasn't getting around it to deal with it. But I've complained because I was mugged by 3 of the residents' family members here. And I complained, and as a result, they came and they did something about changing the front of these flats. So in our little way, we can do something, and we have to be determined. And whatever happens, if we get knocked down, we just have to be resilient and bounce back. And that's what I've been doing for 10 years plus. And I'm still alive. Let's put it that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. I love your attitude towards it. I think that's really, really important. Really important attitude to have. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Wow, I'm loving this, Sahif. You know, well done for really taking us to this level. Very rich conversation. It's all about having a voice, and this is what we are promoting here. And I noticed Ashley is still with us. Now, Ashley, you have heard a lot, and even, you know, in the past conversations. Now, Recovery College, perhaps, you know, when it comes to climate change, it's something that you're already doing or plans to do, but you can hear how much it impacts on our mental health. Maybe I should come in. Let's see your face. Tell us about Recovery College, and especially because next week we'll be crowning the Black History Month by having that real voice in terms of how mental health services are run. certificate.
Hi. Yeah, so my name is Ashley. I'm a recovery worker for mental health for Compass Recovery College. I got hired recently for community outreach. So I've been coming to these groups for the last couple of weeks just to hear everything that's going on. With climate change, honestly, that's not something that we've ever done, or it's not something we realized was so important. I'll obviously feedback all of this back to the team and we'll start from there. I'm hoping to come next week and just ask you some questions through polls about how you feel you get supported by not just Compass, but like Reading Council as a whole. Is there barriers, which I know there is, that's clear from today. What barriers you feel like you have to face and what you think could change to be able to get the support. So I'll be here next week to talk more about that, but it's really interesting and I'm really happy to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ashley. And really, that's a voice we've been having since the lockdown and before. And we hope this to continue after the COVID and beyond. Yes, through the Wellbeing Hub that is up in Oxford Road. So yeah, don't be surprised with what you have already heard and what you hear as we crown the Black History Month next Thursday. And as Dr. Kanina comes to us, I know he has a lot to say before we finish. I just want to share a slide here just to reflect on what we have so far discussed and really thinking about that one individual thing that you're going to do or you continue to do in order to address the big elephant in the room, the climate change. So let me share that as Dr. Kanina prepares to come in. Okay. Yes. Oh. Yes. Now those images, we've had this conversation before, and those are the images we shared at the time. And as the conversation continues on a national and global level, they have become so apparent and so, it's almost like an everyday experience. Now, if you look at the last, the second left image there is a young man lost. I'm not sure whether you can tell where he is lost in, but actually that's a swarm of locusts. And this was in 2020, January, in one of the countries of East Africa, that is Kenya. Now, the stories of locusts, I had heard about them from our seniors as having it happened 70 years ago. But sadly, I wasn't in the country to see this, but this is something that happened and it caused a lot of anxiety. So when we talk of eco-anxiety, it's actually real. It's an everyday experience. Look at the France. Yeah, that's somewhere in Asia, but not long ago, we had something similar in Germany. The fires, the fires are not only in Canada, but in Australia too. And very recently, through volcanicity in Central Africa, we saw this happen. Yeah. Most of you will remember the tsunami. That is somewhere in the coast. The storms that you can see. Now, within where we are, I'm sure most of you will remember the snow that kept us indoors for more than almost 10 days. And since then, whenever there is a scare about the snow, you hear announcements being given all over for people to be cautious and really encouraging not to travel if they don't need to, just because of the impact it is having. So this thing is real. It's our day-to-day experience, and it is important that we do something about it before it gets worse. Now we talk of ego, the ego, human ego is equivalent to eco-anxiety. So let's reduce the ego so that we reduce the anxiety too. And that has to be everybody's business, not just one person's business. So over to you, Dr. Kanina.
Thank you.
Cicely.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question? Is climate changes affect human behavior?
big time. Big time. If you think about the snow we have experienced here now and again, yeah, most people don't get to their workplaces. And what does that mean to the employers? And what does that mean to the benefits we get from the employers? So in that way,
it affects your
human behavior is affected. All right, over to you, Dr. Kanina.
All right, thank you, Cecily. I think what Cecily is asking me to do is to mention some effects of climate change and take the case study of Locust infestation, because there are many, many, many effects of climate change, as we have heard in this forum today, and there are very, very many dimensions of climate change, and we have touched many, many of them. And as you can, as you can recall, we mentioned some things which are political, some are economical, some are social, some are natural. So it is a multidimensional effect that comes from climate change. When we talk about locust infestation, also this thing, locust infestation as an effect of climate change, I think it is also part of the world history. It is not an incident that just came about from nowhere. I think it has had a lot of history. In fact, locusts that came to East Africa in 2000 were called desert locusts. And it is said they originated from Middle East and Sahara Desert and those type of places. So this movement of locusts, insects, and birds, because of differences in climate during different times of the years and seasons, have also been part of history. You know, when locusts infested East Africa, some of the effects they caused is that they ravaged crops. They destroyed crops, and they disseminated or finished the pasture, or those things that the food for animals and birds and insects and everybody, everything. They actually finished anything green and left the whole place without anything, either for food for people or animals or insects and things like that. They devastate everything. And the consequences, the most straight consequences, is famine, shortage of food, and shortage of things to be eaten by the animals or living things. And the consequences, when people do not have food and they are surrounded by that situation of hopelessness, as a human being, psychologically, they respond by being depressed and having mental issues, because the body itself is incapacitated and it has reduced options for living. So it turns to internal mechanism of coping up, which are usually psychological, and they tear the brain. The brain overworks. And I think these issues of depression and stress and mental issues become the order of the day. In fact, many families become chaotic. You hear a lot of domestic violence because there's no food, there's no income, there's nothing. So people turn to one another and you don't know why. And in fact, there were so many deaths. So the countries that were mostly affected in Eastern Africa were Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, Uganda, and Southern Sudan. All these countries are neighbors. And the trade or the way this locust flowed about or moved about, it was like a coordinated journey. They were moving in a process or in a situation where they moved from one country to the other, and they were predictable. You could know when they are in Somalia, next time they will be in northern Kenya, then coast of Kenya, then go towards central Kenya, then all the way to southern Sudan. Some went to Uganda, and so on. And they were multiplying so quickly. We are told that in one jump, they were multiplying 500 times, you can imagine. In one jump, they were multiplying 500 times in a very short duration of time. Now, what then has happened generally because of climate change? What we are finding is that the climate changes comes in certain funny ways because it brings unexpected episodes of drought and floods. Like in Kenya, for example, we had a very big El Nino rain in 1997, and that rain was followed by a spell of long drought where even old indigenous trees dried up. We had El Nino, a very heavy rain, floods in 1997. Then immediately thereafter, it was followed by a very devastating drought. The consequences were that there was a very big famine, and also, like the locust did, there was nothing to eat or to turn to, and the seasons seemed to change. Traditionally, when we were growing up ourselves, rain seasons were determined. You knew when the big rains would come. In fact, they were coming in March and going all the way to May. And then there was short rain, which came in June and going all the way to October. Short rain was called Buraya Mwere, the rain for the millet. And the long rains is when we planted coffee, tea, bananas, and things like that. So now seasons changed when this climate change took effect. Short rains now changed the pattern. Long rains are now coming during the month of December and January. Short rains may come in May. So farmers now are not sure when they can plan to plant. Nobody knows when food can grow. And there's a lot of confusion because of this thing, which is called climate change. The main problem is that there's very little information to the people on how to manage this changing situation. Because what happens when there is this effect of climate change, what government normally do, they usually declare emergency or disasters, and then they go out looking for relief in terms of food, medicine, and things like that. And that's it. After they get into this stage of relief, they then leave people on their own. This is where the problem comes, because how do you get out of a relief situation or an emergency situation on your own? There are no skills on how you can reconstruct yourself. Nobody is supporting you. There are no government policies or systems or resources to help people come out of this. There are no trainings on how you can prepare for these things or how you can identify those ones that are coming. There are no skills or training on how you can mitigate them. These things are not taught to the people. So the victims are hungry, children cannot go to school, people get sick, depressed, no support system, not helped to reconstruct, and so on. Now, myself, my field is sociological things, so working with communities. And for some time now, I have been thinking of piloting on staging a case of what we call climate change mitigation. And how I am looking at it is to conceptualize an idea of how a small village of about 300 people can be enabled to use what is called renewable energy in their lives, cook with biogas, train the community health workers, and equip them with first aid kits, tell people to light, help them to light with solar, help people to farm with organic manure from cows and goats and things like that, and manufacture with waste material, and to help them to use the Israel technology of irrigation known as drip irrigation, which uses very little water. Even water from the kitchen will be enough to grow kitchen garden, and those type of things, and experiment maybe with feeding one class in a local primary school, take them through a process of trying to feed children when they are very young with food which is grown organically, locally in a project, and follow up with that case for about 7 years, see what type of people you will produce, people who would have been prepared, fed well, and made to avoid these effects of the chemicals and climate things and development and modernization and things like that. So this way you establish what we call eco-diversity and try to get rid of eco-anxiety. That's just a small bit of my thinking.
Fantastic, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Kanina. That is a call for action. And clearly we need another conversation to make sure that what we are talking about makes sense and that we are going to be actively involved in being the change that we are seeking.